And welcome back to Flexible Games, where we are playing our bots and trains playthrough, not using belts at all. So we've got some bots going, which is excellent. We've got a few hundred of them. Still not enough. They're all being used. I did put a limit on iron to 1 stack for the output chests. That way, once they filled up and then the smelters themselves filled up, then they would actually attack copper and keep that full. And so I put a limit on those. Because even though, I want the resources, I do want the bots to do other jobs. Mainly, what we're going to work on today is circuits. We've got the 2 basic circuits that we need to hammer out. So let's get to work on those. Now, Bob, dramatically changes the circuit production chain. So a lot of the episode, I'll really need, I'm going to be looking hard at all the ratios, the build speeds, trying to figure out a good design sort of on the fly, because I've not ever built with this before. So the basic circuit board is pretty simple. It's just wood and copper wire. But the trick is getting the ratios right, so you're not wasting production, and you're not having idle assembly machines, because any extreme one way or the other, and you're not producing enough basic materials to keep up with production, or you're producing too many and you've got wasted, production cycles. So I'm looking at all of the different ratios, trying to figure out what would be a good design. And I play around with a few different designs. I'm looking at wooden boards is the base, and I'm looking at how many I'm making basically per second, and I'm looking at how many I can consume per second based on how many circuit boards I want to make. So, here's the basic circuit board. I need 1 wooden board per second. And 1 wooden board per second, I can actually make 2. So the setup is a little lopsided. I can make 2 wood, the basic vanilla wood boards, and then I can use 4. So it's like, it's tough to find a happy medium. I'm playing around with different designs, trying to figure out, okay, let's see how this cascades. Let's see if I can, produce the number that I need. And any sort of branching system like this, you want to get it as close as possible. There are exact ratios that you can try for that are really good if you're using belts, because with belts you can kind of plan to have a buffer on the belt, and without belts it's a little bit trickier. I'm looking at, okay, if I do like an L shape, I might be able to fit some more assemblers, because I'm actually going to be able to make more of the basic boards. I'm making basically 4 per second, and then I'm only going to be using 1 per second. So I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe I can surround it with 4 assembly machines, so it uses all of that capacity. Unfortunately, it's a really difficult thing with the space that I have available. Looking at it now, I'm seeing a different sort of design that might work, that would allow me to get full production. But for now, I'm going for what I call like a bow tie design, sort of a branching design for use. And I'm looking at like, okay, how many copper cable am I going to use for each board? Because the ratios are a little off. So I'm making 2 copper cable and I'm using 3 copper cable. But the timing is a little off. I'm able to make 4 copper cable per second. And this only uses 3 per second. So one copper cable assembly will cover the entire need of that particular production. I don't necessarily need 3. Like the old circuit design, the old green circuit design, you needed 3 to 2 was the old, but this one you're actually able to cover 3 assemblers with 3 copper cables, but I don't have room for 3 assemblers. So I just kind of keep with the bow tie design. And I need some LandFill. I did add the LandFill mod. This is kind of the first time I've really put it into use, and it's helped a great deal. It really has in some of the tighter spots that I need to get to. Kind of make it a little bit more realistic, where you can adjust the land to where you need it. And so with this layout, again, I call it sort of the bow tie design. I try to stick with this as much as possible because it's very efficient in how it moves resources around. Now, I wish I could put a chest in the middle there to kind of share the output, but with the production ratios that I have, I'm able to produce enough of those basic boards to run 4 assemblers. And 4 assemblers, that's a pretty good amount of output for just one assembler. And I don't want to space those out anymore because that would ruin the ratios. That would require me to have more than one basic board assembler. So I'm setting up the outputs, setting up the inputs, and basically getting everything ready to start production. So one board can go into just the basic brown board, which can go into 4 of the basic circuit board assemblers, which have copper with copper cable, and finish off the production. Basic boards or these basic circuit boards are pretty straightforward, kind of equivalent to the green boards. Just a couple ingredients, a slightly longer crafting chain, but nothing too bad. Kind of checking all my inserters, making sure all the inserters are right. Put some wood in, that way it's ready to go once I give it some power. Looking forward to having more advanced power poles, which will be really nice. So one thing I do when I first set up a system like this to make sure I got the ratios done, I'm checking, and then I turn Alt off. And Alt lets me know if there's any main assemblers that are not actually working. With Alt on, it kind of covers it up, but when you turn it off, you can see that all of the assemblers are actually running, and which is a good sign. It's a good sign that there's no wasted cycles. There's no assembler waiting for materials. It's all being supplied as fast as it needs to be. So with that kind of design, it's very modular. If I wanted to add more basic circuit designs, I could basically blueprint that whole set right there, and then build it right next door, and it would do the same thing. It would output. It's a very modular design. It's not expandable like you see on a bus, but it's very modular. Similarly, now we're moving on to the basic electronic board. I call them blue boards, but they're not really blue. It's just a base board with some blue wires. But with this adds a new wrinkle. It adds these basic electronic components, and that is a little bit more complicated. It's a little longer of a crafting chain. And I wanted to try out these new smaller electronic assemblers. They're tiny, they use less power, and they can craft faster. The downside is, since they're only a 2x2, their surface area for inserter placement is crippled. And it's a little tougher, depending on how you lay things out, it's a little tougher to get everything squared away. So I want quite a few of these boards. So I want to set this up, and I'm looking at the ratios, saying, okay, I actually want to set this up to have 4 assemblers making them, similar to my other boards. So one of the things I like to do when learning a new process and learning kind of a new production chain is I place the number of assemblers of the material that I want as the end result. And then I start looking at the crafting chain and the ratios involved. How many of those electronic components? So I'm using 5 and I'm making 5. But the timing was different, so I actually need 2 of the electronic components in order to keep those blue circuits working constantly. It was kind of hard to catch, but those blue circuits are a crafting speed of 5. But the electronic components, even though you make 5 at a time, the electronic components are a 3.5 second delay. So it's not exactly 1-to-1. And in order to get it even, a 3.5 second to a 5 second. So if you have 2 of them, you could support 2 electronic components. You can make 10 in 7 seconds. Well, if you have 2 of the electronic assemblers, in 10 seconds they would use 10. So the ratios aren't exact, and it's a little tougher to work out the ratios. But I do know I'm going to absolutely have to have 2 of those electronic components per blue assembler if I want it to go at full speed. The electronic components take tinned wire, which is another interesting hitch in the process. There's really no like vanilla related circuit for this. This isn't really related to like the red circuits or the blue circuits. It's kind of an in between. It occupies a space in between the red and the green circuits in vanilla. I'm looking at trying to figure out if I can optimize the tinned wire, because I'm actually able to produce quite a bit of tinned wire in the 3.5 seconds that those are actually working. I could support a lot of assemblers just on one tinned wire, but again, without using belts, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to lay out. So I'm looking at possibly trying to bridge the copper wire, and it in the end it really is frustrating because of the ratios involved. But I can support 2 of those assemblers with only 1 of the tinned wire, which is nice. I don't, you know, the butterfly. This isn't really a butterfly or a bow tie layout. This is a single layout, just repeated 4 times. So again, if you wanted to repeat it, if you wanted to expand it, you could expand it with just 1 of these little corners, or you could expand it with 4 at a time. So it's modular in that it can be expanded, but it's not expandable like you would on a bus system where you just start adding assemblers down the line. It's easily blueprintable. You can blueprint it and then paste it anywhere you want, and it will just work. So another ingredient that these blues actually require is solder. And we have a little bit of solder, but we're going to need to sort of look at the solder in a future episode, because I'm pretty sure all of the other types of circuit boards after this require solder. Getting all the inserters working. Kind of double checking everything. I have a lot of stuff in my inventory. All of these basic electronic components that I was crafting separately, I now have just absolutely stacked in my inventory, and it's hard to get rid of because I have so many. I mean, they stack to 200, and I have just tons of them. So I'll try to get rid of some in there. Work on double checking my ingredients. I need the basic boards for this process. So let's go ahead and add them to the requester chest. Make sure they're being delivered. And then we want some output. And I can share output. I'll do 4. So it's essentially 2 squares per assembler. And then I'll put the inserters to output. I don't have any of the copper wire set up yet because I have so many of those electronic components. I don't want to hook that up yet. I don't want those to actually produce yet because I've got so many of them. So that is running. It's not complete, not 100% yet, but it is going. Put some lights up so when it gets dark we can see, and all of the bots are currently busy with copper related items. We got a few that are helping us out. Again, I'm looking at, okay, it needs 3 copper wire and 3 copper wire, but the recipe for copper wire only produces 2. So I'm trying to figure out, okay, is there a good ratio? A perfect ratio would be 3 to 2. But again, with the spacing, it makes it difficult with these smaller assemblers. These smaller assemblers really are rough to lay out perfectly because they don't really reach as far. So I'm looking to sort of stretch it out. I can use the little ones on the outsides. So these will be the copper wire, and these will be the tinned wire. I'll give you an overview of it here. Look at all our bots. Fill some more electronic components out of our inventory. And can show you that we've got circuits being made in larger quantities now. Not going to quite hook up the copper cable yet. I need to revamp tin and solder plate and solder itself, so that will have to wait for a future episode. So I'm thinking about putting tin over there because it's right next to that big tin deposit. Well, that'll do it for this episode. So stay tuned for more, and until then, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.